Hello everyone, this is Eye on Africa for Friday, September 17th. Here are the headlines. South Africa's top court denies an application by Jacob Zuma to rescind his 15-month jail sentence. In a scathing rebuke, it accuses the former president of litigious skullduggery. We'll go to Cape Town in just a moment to speak to France 24's Nadine Theron. Has Ebola been defeated? Virologists are optimistic after a new treatment is approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. And more than 400 trucks sent by the United Nations to the Tigray region in Ethiopia have disappeared, and the World Food Programme says that's having a direct impact on its humanitarian response in the area. But first, South Africa's Constitutional Court has upheld former President Jacob Zuma's jail sentence. The 79-year-old had asked the court to rescind its decision to sentence him to 15 months in prison for contempt of court. For more, let's go live to Cape Town. France 24's Nadine Theron joins us. Nadine, on what basis did the court make its ruling?
So the court ruled that Zuma didn't meet the grounds for a rescission, and these grounds are that an accused person had been absent from court proceedings and judgment against them, or that an error in the law had been made. But Judge Sisi Kampepe, who delivered the judgment, said that Zuma, it's not like he couldn't make the court appearances, he simply chose to be absent. And that's not the same as not being able to make it. He also ignored several summonses to appear before the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture last year, before the court had to order him to do so. And then he also failed to submit arguments about this when the court asked him to do so. So that's why he just doesn't meet the grounds. He simply ignored the court's orders. But the thing is that the judgment doesn't really affect Zuma at this moment, because he has been released from jail on medical parole after the National Correctional Commissioner decided by himself to release Zuma, despite recommendations by the Medical Parole Board. So now 3 organizations have filed papers in the court to review Zuma's release and for it to be set aside, because it can only be overturned by a court. In the meantime, we've heard that there's been some progress in his health, and he is slightly better.
So how have the former president's supporters and family reacted to that decision?
Well, Zuma's son, his most outspoken son, Edward, told the national broadcaster today that the family is going to show their anger and that the whole world will see their anger. And that's quite disconcerting, as the last time the family showed their anger was when Zuma started his sentence in July. And after that, South Africa was gripped by a frenzy of looting and arson, and it was the worst scenes of violence the country has experienced since democracy, in the advent of democracy in 1994. And the riots were said to be deliberately started, orchestrated. President Cyril Ramaphosa actually called it an attempted insurrection against the state. So that's quite disconcerting that they're angry now. And also considering Zuma is due to appear in courts again next week in a different court in KwaZulu-Natal for a corruption case dating back to 1999. He didn't appear previously, earlier this month, due to his illness and hospitalization. So this time, if he doesn't appear, he'll have to submit evidence as to why he's not appearing.
Nadine Theron in Cape Town. Nadine, thank you very much. There's both some good and bad news in the fight against Ebola. Virologists believe that a new treatment approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration is effectively a cure against the virus. But a new study suggests Ebola will be difficult to eradicate because it can lay dormant for many years before causing a carrier to become contagious once again. Mario Sofos explains.
Congolese virologist Jean-Jacques Muyembe has dedicated half of his life to fighting the Ebola virus. He now believes the battle is over thanks to a new treatment.
Today, it gives us great joy to tell you that the Ebola virus disease has been defeated.
Professor Muyembe discovered the Ebola virus in 1976 in an isolated region of Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. In recent years, he's been working alongside a laboratory in the US to develop a treatment. Ibanga, as it's known, was approved by the US Food and Drug Administration last December and will soon be on the market.
A single injection and the patient is cured. When you have been dealing with a virus like this for 40 years, and you've also contributed to the development of this drug yourself, it's a source of national pride. It is the achievement of my life.
Ebola may not be that easily eradicated, though. According to a study released by the scientific journal Nature, a patient who has been cured can still carry the virus for years afterwards, meaning that they could become contagious again and cause a new wave of infections. The World Health Organization maintains that no form of treatment has yet succeeded in eliminating the virus. Since it first appeared, Ebola has killed more than 15,000 people, 11,000 of whom died during the epidemic that hit West Africa from 2013 to 2016.
The United States are warning Ethiopia of new sanctions. President Joe Biden signed an executive order this Friday that allows sanctions against warring parties in northern Ethiopia if they fail to commit to a negotiated settlement. The order establishes a sanctions regime to increase pressure on the parties. It gives the U.S. Treasury Department the necessary authority to sanction the governments of Ethiopia and Eritrea, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, and other parties. Meanwhile, the United Nations is sounding the alarm over hundreds of aid trucks that have not returned from the Tigray region. The World Food Programme says they have no information about where the trucks are or what they're being used for. France 24's Maria Garrett Nicolescu has more from Addis Ababa.
The UN's World Food Programme said on Friday that over 400 trucks that did not return from Tigray currently represent the primary impediment to scaling up humanitarian efforts in the region. Since the 12th of July, 445 trucks carrying humanitarian supplies were able to enter Tigray, but only 38 of them were able to return so far. The UN has warned on several occasions of a humanitarian blockade that is significantly slowing down the distribution of aid in Tigray, where a shortage of food and medical supplies is fueling a humanitarian crisis. The Tigrayan rebels and the Ethiopian government are accusing each other of being responsible for the situation. Currently, trucks carrying aid supplies can enter Tigray through only one road via the Afar region. The procedure is lengthy and requires to pass several checkpoints. The World Food Programme said it has no information regarding the whereabouts of the trucks and that humanitarian actors are currently unable to assemble convoys of significant size. A government Twitter account mentioned suspicions of the TPLF seizing trucks for their own logistics. TPLF leader Getachew Reda, however, said drivers were being harassed at checkpoints, that they were complaining about fuel shortages, and that this had nothing to do with Tigrayan officials.
The UN Commission of Inquiry on Burundi says the conditions in the country have worsened for opposition parties, journalists, and NGOs, despite authorities apparently easing restrictions. The findings have cast a shadow over hopes that Evariste Ndayishimiye, who was elected last year, would help the country turn a corner and improve its human rights record. Laurent Bersacher has the details.
A scathing report for Burundian authorities. According to UN investigators, the country's human rights situation has deteriorated since the election of Evariste Ndayishimiye in 2020, despite the president's pledge to end repression in Burundi. The commission's findings were hailed by members of the opposition.
De graves violations des droits de la personne humaine qui restent toujours d'actualité. Je pense notamment aux enlèvements, aux disparitions forcées.
The report pointed to increased repression towards NGOs, journalists, and members of the opposition who are still regularly targeted by abusive restrictions. It also noted widespread human rights violations, including torture and arbitrary arrests, and denounced the near-total impunity granted to security forces. But allies of the ruling party said the accusations were baseless.
Il y a des personnes qui meurent, mais lorsque automatiquement un rapport comme celui des Nations Unies accuse directement les agents du service national de renseignement sans citer aucun nom, nous pensons que également c'est une rancune de leur part. Bon, ça c'est la chanson qu'on a connue depuis 2015.
In 2015, Pierre Nkurunziza's decision to run for a controversial third term in office plunged Burundi into a massive political crisis in which over 1,200 people were killed and some 400,000 forced into exile. The crisis also saw the government introduce a series of restrictions, severely curbing freedom of the press and criminalizing most forms of dissent.
West African leaders are in Guinea. Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo and Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara arrived in Conakry this Friday. They both met with coup leader Lieutenant Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya. This comes after regional bloc ECOWAS ramped up pressure on leaders to hold elections soon to return the country to civilian rule. Doumbouya has not yet responded to those calls. He spent much of the week meeting with political and civil society figures, but has yet to commit to a timetable. Finally, an Ethiopian movie released in 1993 to critical acclaim is coming to Netflix. The film is called Sankofa and was directed by Haile Gerima. It tells the story of an African-American fashion model attending a photo shoot in Ghana and who's taken back in time and experiences slavery through the eyes of Shola, who is a house servant at a plantation in the southern United States. Sankofa has been remastered in 4K. It will be available on Netflix in the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand beginning on September 24th. And that is Eye on Africa. Live from Paris continues in just a moment. Julia Kim will be here right after a short break.